Welcome to Company of Legends, the story so far, the Pylon Trilogy. So today we're going to talk about the first part of the Pylon Trilogy, which is a sprawling, epic tale that we've put together as part of our Age of Empire Company of Legends events that started back in 2018. What we'll be doing in this series is we're talking about the first two, so 2018 and 2019, and we'll touch a little bit on what people can expect in 2019. And we'll also, if there's time, talk about how we wrote this story and who was involved and what sort of influences we took. So, as you can see, our own little kind of tagline, the Pylon Trilogy Sprawling Saga. It's the history of the Horus Heresy. And each of the Company of Legends narratives are linked by a central theme, and that is these strange pylons that have been left scattered across the galaxy, whose power could be both a blessing or a curse for whichever side understands how to wield them. So, rather, I don't know, self-congratulatory, we've actually called these books, just to sort of keep with the heresy thing. So, book 1 is the Plight of Kyvas Major. Book 2 was Echoes of Eternity, which was last year, and book 3 will be The Fall of Angels. And to give you some kind of idea of where things are in the big heresy picture, with Istvan at one end and the Siege of Terror at the other, this is approximately where things are on the timeline. So book 2, weirdly enough, the second event, happens early on in the heresy. Book 1 is a little bit further along, just after the Ruin Storm, and book 3 happens just before the Siege of Terror. So that should give you some idea of where you are in the sort of big timeline of things. So with the first book, so the Plight of Kyvas Major. So Kyvas Major was a long and strange history. It has one of these pylons, which is basically the capital city, which is Hive Julius, was built around. It has the ability, weirdly enough, to pierce the Ruin Storm, and in fact this pylon itself shielded this planet from traditional kind of navigational means for some time until somebody found it by accident. So it's got a strange and really very much unknown history. The Traitors, however, seeing that this was a potential way for the Loyalist forces to communicate with Terra, launched a massive invasion to take this planet. And they invaded by crashing a corrupted rogue trader ship called the Terra's Enlightenment directly into the planet as a sort of prelude to a massive surprise invasion. And the Traitors' plan was to capture the pylon, to understand its power, and to open a warp rift further to allow the planet to be claimed entirely by demons. And that was the sort of word bearer's cunning plan all along. And the story, uniquely, I suppose, from our point of view, was we wanted to tell a story from two different perspectives, so both sides of the war, if you like, rather than traditionally it being sort of told from one side. And what we had is we had two commentaries on the same thing. One was from a PDF reservist called Forrich. He was actually a Kyvas Major resident, and called up as part of the sort of Loyalist defenders at the beginning of the heresy to guard the planet against attack. And the other was Lucider, and he was a lieutenant in a solar auxiliary regiment that had decided to fight for the War Master. So our two sort of main characters in this. So Forrich, like I say, was just mobilised just before the Terra's Enlightenment, and he was involved in all the key points of the Battle of Kyvas. So he fought alongside the Astartes in the failed defence of Mortis Valley, where the defenders were overrun. He fought in the collapsed Hive Invictum to delay the Traitors' seemingly unstoppable advance on the capital, Hive Julius. He fought hand-to-hand close combat with demons and word-bearer cultists deep in the sort of twisted entrails of this warped rogue trader ship, the Terra's Enlightenment. And this was a sort of crucible of evil that was being used to summon demons from the warp to aid the losing traitor forces at this point. And he survived the annihilation of Hive Invictus ruins, which entombed a large part of the traitor relief force, and thus giving victory to the Loyalist defenders on Kyvas. And the second sort of protagonist was Lucider. and he was a professional soldier. He'd been as part of the Great Crusade, but was with his sort of renamed Solar Auxiliary Regiment. They named themselves the Gravediggers after they'd sort of thrown their lot in with the War Master. So, as part of the initial strike force, Lucider was also sort of observed the key engagements of the battle for Kyvas. So, he witnessed the brutal slaughter of the Mortis Valley Loyalist defenders, as mentioned previously. He also fought Iron Hands, who were holding the entrance to the ruined hive, which was the direction of travel that the traitor forces needed to go in. And he accompanied Iron Warrior and Night Lords into the subterranean ruins of Hive Invictum. Hive Invictum had been destroyed because the Terra's Enlightenment had literally ploughed through it in its sort of descent through the planet, and sort of taken, smashed all the spires, and they sort of got into the Underhive. So it was a pretty tricky place to navigate, but the Loyalists managed to funnel the traitor forces into it. And once they were in there, they were effectively trapped, or a large part of them were trapped, and the Loyalists basically blew up a number of very large sort of nuclear devices underground, trapping everybody in there, Loyalist and traitor alike. So, with the sort of victory for traitors, this is how it panned out. So, the mysterious pylon, which was the whole sort of objective, still maintained its sort of astropathic communication link through the ruin storm, but after 8 days from the sort of final traitor being expunged from the surface, it stopped working, and it wouldn't come back to life until much later in the heresy. With his regiment destroyed, Lucider started to fight a sort of one-man guerrilla war against the Loyalists who he hated, and he was sort of hiding out in the ruins of damaged Hive Julius, which was the capital city. Lucider had found a sort of Kyvas PDF patrol, and using a sniper rifle took a shot at the leader. However, just as he pulls the trigger, the leader turns around to reveal that it's Forrich, and at that point in the story we reveal that Forrich is in fact Lucider's brother. And Lucider is then captured by some patrolling space wolves right after that shooting, and is transported off planet. And Forrich's unit find Lucider's broken gun and bring it back to Forrich, where he's finally revealed that the person who just tried to shoot and kill him and just succeeded in taking his ear off was in fact his own brother. So kind of like a mini-cosm, if you like, of the whole heresy itself, with brother against brother. So with the sort of stories that we write, it's important to remember that we write a huge amount of story, but we only use a small part of it. So this particular story is a result of the games played. So we use a sort of branching narrative system. So we start off with one game, and then that can branch to multiple different outcomes, and the next one can branch to multiple different outcomes, and so on and so forth. So this was our first attempt at that. It was fairly successful. So we got an interesting story out of it. We got 2 different stories on the 2 events that we ran. But this is the one that we've sort of made canon, if you like. And yeah, so it could have been a completely different story. And when we sort of send some links out with this, you'll be able to see all of the content, the entirety of it, in its full glory, as well as all the potential endings that we wrote for this. Where in one ending, for example, with traitors win, the whole planet is consumed in a sort of demonic invasion, if you like, which was part of the traitors' plan, and sort of varying degrees in between. So yeah, so like I said, it's the way that Company of Legends games are run, narratives are run. They are completely determined by the actions of the players rather than us telling a particular story. So that makes them quite interesting. It also means there's quite a lot of replay value in this. So, for example, using the same story and missions for the Heresy Bunker in Sunderland, because we've already written them and we may get a different outcome depending on different results. So there you go. So that's the end of part 1. In the second part of this video series, I'll be talking about last year's event, which was set on Ali Axis. So I'll see you then.